if we just leave things on default and kind of move forward in that direction, unfortunately, what most of the time is the outcome is your loved one ends up in the hands of the social system, and the social system does not have a good plan for your loved one. So making the decision to say, okay, we're going to be intentional about this, we're going to create a plan, even though it's hard,
Yes.
because it's acknowledging in a way your mortality. It's acknowledging that, well, okay, I can't do this forever.
Hello, and welcome to Forever Home for Our Kids with Disabilities. I'm Valerie, mum to two with disabilities, one visible, one invisible. I'm a life coach and an author. This space has been created to help you navigate the journey of creating a secure, sustainable forever home for your child. We'll chat with parents on this path, realtors, financial planners, and other experts who can make the process easier. Why am I so passionate about this? Because seeing my eldest thrive living independent of us was a gift I didn't always know I could give. I want you to have the opportunity to explore giving that gift to your child. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Forever Home for Our Kids with Disabilities. I am so grateful for each and every one of you who tunes in to listen and or to watch this podcast. We so appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you to those that are sharing the podcast episodes. We really appreciate it because there's so many families that need to hear the information that we share. So today I have a special guest from Ontario, Canada. Woohoo! And his name is Eric Goll. Eric's mission is born out of love for his sister and a deep commitment to ensuring that people with developmental disabilities can lead the awesome, ordinary lives they deserve. Eric is a certified coach from Royal Roads University. He combines his personal experience with professional expertise to provide tailored guidance to families. Through his work with over 1,000 families, Eric has learned what works and what doesn't, allowing him to guide families more effectively on this journey. Eric helps families transition their loved one with developmental disabilities into a meaningful, independent life that they deserve. So, welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Valerie. It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us. So, I usually ask all my guests, how did they get into the world of people with disabilities? So, please share with us your journey.
Yeah, so for me, don't have a disability per se myself. I would be someone who's considered neurotypical, but I was born into a world where my sister had a disability. So I have an older sister. So born into that type of a family environment. So it's really all that I've known growing up with an older sister with a disability. And I think, just because it's all that I've known, it was kind of just that's normal family life, right? Growing up. And as I started to grow up, maybe I don't know exactly the point in time where I realized that my family experience was different than maybe my friends' family experience, where they didn't have a loved one with a disability. I would say maybe around 8, 10 years old, I really started to become aware of it. That's how it kind of came to be for me. And then really getting more involved in my family life and helping my sister create her own life wasn't until it was around 2015 when I got much more involved in helping my sister kind of plan her life and help my mom, support my mom, I guess, through that process as well.
Mhm. Well, I love the fact that you were aware and the fact that you actually wanted to help your mom go through this process because it's not easy as a parent, being a parent of two myself with disabilities, trying to navigate what it's like to live life, just to kind of keep it all together. The appointments, the this, the that, like it's just ongoing when the children are little. And then as they mature, it's like, okay, so what does the future look like? Because then that mortality thing comes in. I ain't going to live for forever. So how am I going to cope? And I don't like to say that we're getting older, but we mature. So our bodies don't work the same way.
Right.
And when we have children like my daughter, my oldest is total care. It's like, can I sustain this kind of care for her long term? So those were some of the things that I was thinking about before we set up our daughter. So I'm sure your mom was probably thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, and that was really at the point where I got involved. So my mom did everything until she couldn't do anything. So she became just physically, emotionally burnt
Mhm.
out, exhausted. And it was around 2015, called me in tears. And I remember I was at work, it was like 2 in the afternoon. I see my mom's name come up on my phone. I was like, why is my mom calling me right now? And I pick up, I'm like, hi, mom, like, what's up? I'm kind of in the middle of things at work. So they get to the point, and then, I could immediately hear the emotion in her voice. And I don't know what exactly happened at home. Something happened, and she was like, I can't do it anymore. And my stomach dropped just knowing that's all she had to say, right? Like I completely understood where she was at. And at that point in time, it was just making a decision, right? Do I just keep focusing on my own life? I was very career driven at that point in time, focusing on me, knowing that there was challenges within my family, but this is kind of my mom crying for help. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're having this conversation today. So we know which decision I chose. So yeah, focused on supporting my family to kind of move forward from that.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing that you took the time and sacrificed your career to be able to do this. But I always feel that there's a silver lining and we get guided to where we're meant to be. So I believe that this is what you were created to do.
Yeah, I believe the same. Like you mentioned the word sacrifice. I don't view it as a sacrifice. I view it as really finding that calling or finding more
Yeah.
purpose in my life. And I think this kind of supporting my sister and then, working with other families has added a lot more purpose and meaning to my life. And it's been super rewarding seeing my sister grow tremendously, seeing my mom happier, not burnt out, and then translating that learning and that work to be able to help other families achieve the same.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. We're on the same trajectory with regards to helping families understand that there is another way, that we can give our loved ones an opportunity to live independent of us. And I so can relate to your mom with the burnout. I was honestly millimeters from total burnout when we decided that we needed to do something different for our daughter, Melody Ann, who is total care. And not that we didn't love her and not that we didn't want to be able to care for her, but I recognized I couldn't keep all the balls in the air. I was working, I'm a wife, I'm a mom to two, both of them needing sort of intervention, whether it be through medical or whatever the services may be for each of the children. And so you get to a place where you can't keep it all together. And it's just unfortunate that often we get to that place of total burnout before we recognize we can't do it anymore. So this is part of why you do what you do and why I do what I do, so that we can help prevent this burnout and we can get people to recognize and families to realize that there is another way that we can architect the future for our children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Eric, tell me, you've been working with over 1,000 families, so congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you have a program, the eight-step life planning process. So, please share with us what were the factors that prompted you to develop this program?
Yeah, so things kind of naturally progressed after supporting my sister to build her own life.
Mm.
So from there, I kind of dove deeper into coaching and then got mentors and started a podcast and did all of those things to kind of, I guess, deepen my knowledge in terms of how I can really create a structured program to support families to move forward. And then, so basically started coaching families one on one. And then from there, 2018 was the first time I did kind of a small group coaching with 30 families. And then it's just kind of grown from there to serve now over 1,000 families, which is kind of hard to, I don't know, believe in my own head. So just through working with all of those families and kind of several different cohorts, because usually I work with a group of families at one time. It's just been a tweaking and revising of the process over time to really what's super effective and leaving the non-super effective pieces behind and just kind of refining over time. So yeah, we've kind of narrowed it down to an 8-step process, which I teach families through, I call it like a life planning 101 workshop. I think you might have attended that, Valerie. And then for families that want to actually go deeper and build a customized life plan with my support, I've got a full program called the Customized Life Plan Program. And the families can then further join. But yeah, if you're interested, we can walk through kind of what those 8 steps are and at a high level. And if families are interested, we can give them kind of resources to go deeper if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Thank you so much. So, yeah, let's look at those 8 steps.
Yeah, sounds good. So you kind of already mentioned step one, which is engage. Really, what engages is making the commitment to get started, to start to, your words, architect the future. So to create a positive
Mhm.
vision, life vision for your loved one, because if we just kind of let things move forward without putting intentional thought into what life
Mhm.
could look like for our loved one with a disability, then that's when we end up in crisis, right? We're kind of stuck in the weeds doing the day-to-day caregiving, and it's hard to see beyond that. And if we just continue to do that, what often happens is you hit that wall of burnout, or you get to a point in life where you're hoping that, the government systems, the social system will step in and provide the support for your loved one. And if I think for many families, if you get to that point and you go to reach out to those supports, what you think that might be there for a support system, you're very disappointed in what is there or what might be there. So for my family, we thought that at that point in time, like, okay, a group home would be available for my
Yeah.
sister. That's all we knew. I know much better now but it was a 20-year wait list to access that
Wow.
sort of support. And since going through that learning in that process, it's figuring out that, hey, there's actually a lot better home options
Yeah.
than a group home. And the 8-step life planning process, home is step number 5 or 6. So we will get to that and talk more about home. But if we just leave things on default and kind of move forward in that direction, unfortunately, what most of the time is the outcome is your loved one ends up in the hands of the social system, and the social system does not have a good plan for your loved one. So making the decision to say, okay, we're going to be intentional about this, we're going to create a plan, even though it's hard,
Yes.
because it's acknowledging in a way your mortality. It's acknowledging that, well, okay, I can't do this forever, right? Which is really hard. So there's a lot of emotional stuff tied up in
Yes.
that. And I know you're going
Yep.
through it. So the first step is to say engage and commit, right? Okay, I'm going to move forward.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. Step two is connect. So it's making sure that we deeply understand who our loved one is
Yeah.
before building the life plan. Because when we're just starting, often we are in the weeds. And being in the weeds might be, there's a frustration that you have with your loved one, or you're only seeing, the caregiving piece with your loved one. And if we just build a plan based on that, it's not going to be a great plan for your loved one.
Mhm.
So we want to zoom out. We want to be flying that plane 5,000 feet in the air and looking down on so we can see all of who your loved one is. Also, when I work with families in the customized life plan program on a deeper level, we actually start asking questions of other people as well that know your loved one well, so we can see a more holistic view of
Right.
who your loved one is. Yeah, so that's step number two. Connect, be connected in with who your loved one is. The other piece is this often holds families up,
Mm.
is not necessarily needing your loved one to be on board with creating the life plan up front.
Okay.
Because when I work with families, say 97, I was gonna say 95, but it's higher than that. It's like 97% of the time, their loved one with a disability is not interested in the idea of creating a life plan.
Okay.
Why? Because it means change.
Mhm.
And change is often hard. It means, especially if a family is thinking about home or thinking about the future of their loved one living somewhere else or not living with mom and dad, it's like, well, that's an overwhelming thought,
Yeah.
right? And what are you trying to kick me out? Right? Like, so those are the sorts of thoughts and overwhelm that often come up for our loved ones with a disability. So the key here is If you're listening to this, you're likely the family leader or one of the family leaders in your household. So it's for you to get started.
Yeah,
And most often that's getting started without your loved one. And throughout the 8 step process, we look for ways to engage your loved one along the way.
good.
And it doesn't have to be in a full life planning process. It's just like maybe one of the 8 steps, we find ways to engage them and slowly help them kind of move forward through the process one small step at a time. So
So I guess this is just giving them a bit of an awareness of things may change. They're not going to change just now, but we're working towards change coming down the road.
that might work for some folks. That might also overwhelm some folks, right?
Hmm.
So it really has to be a personalized approach to how you know your loved one best and how to engage them. I think the key that I really stress when working with families on this is patience, right?
Mm,
Don't feel like when you start doing this life planning or you start going through these 8 steps, don't feel like your loved one needs to know each of these 8 steps or your loved one needs to know everything that you're learning. That's probably going to overwhelm them. So you're probably going to have more conversations amongst your family members. And when you do that, it's looking for where your loved one's leaning in or looking for where your loved one's interested and then
yes.
engage them on that topic,
Okay.
right? And then maybe try and get a win with them on that topic. And then once you do, you can start bringing them into other areas.
Okay. Love it. Okay, so you've obviously thought this through, and I guess having 1,000 families under your belt, you kind of have been able to navigate and know kind of what works. In my world, what I'm learning, I have a little bit of the opposite because the parents are still holding on real tight.
Okay.
The child themselves, they actually want to experience what it's like living without their parents.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's just being aware of the different approaches, and as you said, the child and how they respond, how they react, and how they take on new information and new situations.
Right. Yeah. And I think that both situations have their challenges, right? I think just from my experience, it's been their loved one doesn't want change, right? Versus their loved one does want change and the parents are resistant to the change. Yeah, I think you're also identifying that, like, even if, mom or dad or another family member has the vision to be looking forward and saying, okay, we need to start planning for the future because this isn't sustainable long term, there's still a big emotional piece to work through as mom or dad. And it doesn't mean that it has to happen tomorrow. When I'm working with families, we're thinking on a 5 year time horizon. So giving yourself a break to say, okay, this is going to take some time, but let's create a plan and have a process to follow where it's just small steps moving forward.
Like it. Love it.
Okay, so we covered step one, engage, step
Yep.
two, connect. Let's move to step number three, which is capability. Families often use the word independence. I would use these words interchangeably, and it's not about your loved one being completely independent.
Okay.
Okay, so it's how can we help your loved one grow more independence?
Right.
And I'd make the argument that no matter how significant our loved one's disability is, we can help them grow more independence.
Yeah.
That's going to look different for everyone. So even if your loved one has a significant disability, it's like, well, we can still help them grow. What I work on with families is really a lot of mindset work because there's often these thoughts and ideas in terms of, for example, my loved one can't do their own self-care. My loved
Mm.
one might be brush their teeth, it might be get out of bed in the morning, it might be get dressed. And by the way, we believe that my sister could not do those things when she was living with my parents. So prior to 2015, mom provided support for my sister for all of those things. So we had to really change our thinking. And that's where it started with, right? So it didn't really start with my sister. It started with me and my mom and my dad changing our thinking about what could be possible for Sarah,
Right.
right? So our expectations were limiting
Hmm.
my sister's growth. It's really important for us to recognize that because so often we think that it's about our loved one, but it's actually about us, right?
Yeah. Truth. Truth.
So, yeah, so once we started examining that, well, we're like, well, okay, let's change that can't to Sarah can if. So from can't to can if.
Yes.
So Sarah can get herself out of bed in the morning if she has her walker beside her bed.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, why have we never thought of that before, right? We get stuck in these patterns as families that just like, this is how we do things, right? Uh, so, we supported my sister by having the tool that she needed to get herself out of bed. Okay, now she can get herself out of the bed in the morning. Okay, that's a huge win, huge step forward. So,
Yeah.
what are the tools, strategies, solutions that are possible to
Hmm.
help your loved one continue to grow? So, it's just an example of a best practice and some mindset work I do guide families through.
Yes.
Um,
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. As you were talking there about, Sarah never really having the opportunity to use her walker and get herself out of bed, I was just thinking, as parents, we get into efficiency mode. So we do because it's efficient and it's quicker. And my husband and I got so much into a routine that
yeah.
it was just so efficient and it was quick, and we had so much to do to get this child on the bus to go to school in the morning. So I totally get where you don't stop and think, well, what if we gave Melody Ann an opportunity to try something? And if we set her up, and being a physiotherapist, that's my background. That's part of what I do as my job is setting people up for success. But as a mom of a child with special needs, didn't always think that through.
And that makes total sense, right? Like, you got to make a certain number of things happen in a specific amount of time. Like, I don't have time to, you know, teach my loved one how to do this right now. Like, it makes sense, right? But also, when we step back and think about it, it's like, okay, if we never change or we never shift out of that way of doing and being, then we're just stuck in that cycle forever.
Yeah.
So we're also taking away the opportunity for our loved one to learn, progress, and
Hmm.
grow, right? So yes, it's faster in the moment, but there's these other challenges as continuing to just create moving forward. One of the key concepts that I help families learn, especially parents, is to shift from being just the caregiver to
Yes.
being the coach.
Ooh.
So instead of doing things for your loved one, or instead of telling your loved one what to do, which, hey, we're all really good at that, right?
Yes.
Instead, stepping back and how can we partner with our loved one
Yeah.
to help them grow, right? And it doesn't mean that your loved one's going to be, fully independent in this Western ideal. It's going to be thinking about, well, how can your loved one continue to grow? If it's a 10-step process to do whatever, to get dressed in the morning,
Great.
maybe your loved one's not going to do all 10 steps. But hey, maybe we can start with step number one and two, and then maybe they need help with step 3 to 9, and then they do 10 on their own, right?
Hmm.
And then maybe over time they can build the capability to do those other steps. But once your loved one's doing more of those steps on their own, hey, what does that mean? Well, as a caregiver, it gives you more freedom too,
Yes.
right? So it's an investment. Being a coach is an investment of time versus just being stuck in this cycle of doing and doing and doing and caregiving.
Hmm. Yeah.
So those are some of the strategies behind the capability piece, which is step number 3. And then when I work with families, we're building a 5-year vision for each of these core life domains.
Okay.
So capability is one of those core life domains. So we want to think out 5 years from now, what would be awesome in terms of capability for your loved one and painting that picture because we want a direction to start to move
Yeah.
forward to.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, painting that vision, but having something to look forward to. This is the goal we're working towards because then the motivation will keep going if you know where your end goal is.
Exactly. And it starts to shift you out of just the day to day to,
Yeah.
okay, we understand what better looks like and how to start to move in that direction. And you
Yeah.
can start to move in that direction one step at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Step number 4 is relationships. Now, often it's challenging for a person with a developmental disability to build and develop and maybe even deepen relationships with neurotypical folks. And
Mm.
there's many reasons for that. A big one is systematic barriers. I mean, if you even think about the school system, right? So
Hmm.
many school systems are still placing people with developmental disabilities into special classrooms.
Yeah.
What does that do? It makes it very hard for a person to connect with other people that have strong social skills, right?
Yeah.
So, people we might term as neurotypical kids don't have the opportunity to interact very much with kids that would be called neurodivergent.
Yeah.
So it creates this separation, it creates this othering, it creates a challenge to be able to learn good social skills from
Yeah.
other people who have strong social skills because you're placed with just other people who have maybe underdeveloped social skills. So it's really important for us to acknowledge that and then think intentionally about how do we support our loved one to build more intentional relationships with neurotypical folks. And I really have a focus on helping families think about relationships with neurotypical folks because that's usually what's missing in your loved
Mm.
one's life. And as a mom or as a dad, as a caregiver, you're thinking about, well, okay, I'm my loved one's go-to person right now,
Yeah.
right? Probably no one's going to replace you. No one person's going to replace you. But how can we think about a few people replacing you? And they're probably not going to replace everything that you do, but we want people there that we trust that are going to have our loved ones back. Maybe help our loved one make decisions that are going to advocate for our loved one. When we think about who those people we want to be there, those are neurotypical folks
Yeah.
typically, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's really where I lean in terms of helping families to put their energy and attention on. And one of the tools to do that is a support circle.
Mhm.
And what a support circle is, simply for folks that maybe haven't heard of it, is of intentionally bringing people in to get to know your loved one. Sometimes if a circle is more formal, it can be set up where you might have 4 to 6 meetings per year. You might even have an agenda for those meetings around helping your loved one to achieve their goals or live into that life plan. But it can also just be more social, helping people get to know your loved one on a deeper level.
I'm just thinking about the support circle because that's something that, as a parent, I didn't really think too much about, but it is something that I'm very cognizant of that is extremely needed in my child's life. My youngest is doing well with their neurodivergence and sort of creating community, but my oldest, who is nonverbal, G-tube fed, wheelchair bound, not so easy for her. So this is something that has been heavy on my heart. And so timely that we're having this conversation now because it is something that's on my mind to do. And actually included the thought of and referenced you support circles in my book that I'm writing that I actually just finished that chapter. So I will be pointing people to you in that because I do believe the importance of that because I'm not going to be here forever. And unfortunately for my children, Scott and I don't have any family in the same city that we live in. So we really don't have anybody to step in for us, or if we become ill or we're not able to physically do what we need to do for our children. So this is something that's really dear to my heart right now that I need to be working on to make sure that the pieces are in place for when we're no longer able to do what we do for our children.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Thinking about a support circle can be extremely overwhelming,
Yeah.
especially if you're feeling like, well, there isn't a family member that's close or knows our loved one well or that lives close by. I hear you, and you're not alone in that. So, what I guide families to is you don't need to invite 4 people or 6 people or 8 people all in at once, right? For most families, that's a very overwhelming thought. So, how do we simplify it? I actually learned this through other families because I kind of followed the traditional model of support circles, which is great. I think the original idea of support circles came from Judith Snow, and then it's been kind of iterated on and evolved over time. Well, a couple of families I was working with, they learned this concept of support circles, and then they're like, that's too much. Like, that's way overwhelming. So,
Mm.
one family that's coming to mind, the mom's name is Peggy, and her son's name is also Eric. So, not to confuse her son Eric with
Okay.
me, but her son's name's Eric. So, Peggy actually followed the 8 steps that I shared, the life planning process. And so she started with capability, and her son was interested in cooking. So she started investing and coaching Eric on how to cook, and he started to gravitate towards making lunch and making these delicious sandwiches.
Ooh.
So was in conversation with Peggy, and we're celebrating this win of her son Eric making these delicious sandwiches. And I don't remember if I said it or she said it, but it clicked in her mind. She's like, "Oh, okay. It's too much to start with making a support circle where we're inviting 6 to 4 people in." But Eric learned this skill of making sandwiches, and I know that it's important to help other people see how our loved ones can contribute. So the idea popped in our mind, well, what if I just invite one person over, or we invite one person over, and Eric, her son, can make lunch,
Yes.
right? That puts Eric in a valued role. He's contributing to that person that is inviting over. It's a pretty awesome, ordinary thing to do. So they
Yes.
invited Eric's cousin, Fawny, over. Fawny brought her baby. They had a great time. Eric made lunch, deepened connection. Fawny saw more capability in Eric now because he's making the invitation, he's inviting her over for lunch. And then the outcome of that was not only that they had a great time, that she was interested in coming over again, but Eric's aunt, so Fawny's mom, was like, "Why the heck didn't you invite me?" And she's like, "Next time I'm coming," or like, "I'm the next person you're inviting over." So now it's evolving into Eric's Sandwich Club, right? Which
Cool.
isn't how a traditional circle works, but hey, it's a great way to get started, right? Just
Hmm.
one intentional relationship at a time, and then you can add a second person, add a third over time. And even, thinking about it, what difference would it make if your loved one just had one more person that was interested in their life?
Yes. Absolutely.
Huge.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that was relationships. And then the next area, number 5, is contribution. Contribution is thinking about how do we create a meaningful life? How do we create purpose in our loved one's day? Because so often people with disabilities, our loved ones, are put in this role as a client, right? So they need to be served, right? And
Mm.
hey, I get it. People, disabilities can often need some level of support, whether that's from us as family members, or maybe it's paid support or a combination of those things. But that often puts our loved one in this client role, and they're always being served. And often people with disabilities are just thought about, how can we keep them busy, or how can we keep them occupied? So it often leads to filling their life with activities, but just doing
Mhm.
activities all the time doesn't provide meaning or substance
Right.
to a person's life.
Yeah.
So it's kind of flipping the thinking of our loved one just being in a client role to how can our loved one
Mm.
serve other people? How can
Yes.
our loved one contribute to the lives of other people? So it could be thinking about, well, what might a part-time job look like? What might volunteering look like? What might it look like to contribute to your ordinary community group that maybe you're involved in or you might be interested in being involved in? And supporting our loved one to do that effectively. And when we do that, it actually helps our loved one not only build more meaning in their life, in their day, but it helps other people see our loved one as valued.
Yes. Which is so important. So important. As you're speaking about volunteering, I'm just thinking about Melody Ann, who for a long time kept saying the name of her elementary school. She wouldn't really give as much on her device about why she kept talking about Emily Follansbee as the name of the school. And so it took me a while, but I figured out she kept saying she wanted to go to the school. But to do what, Melody? And you've left school now, you've done high school, you're done school. So what it turned out to be, Eric, is that she wanted to volunteer at the school because
Wow.
she uses a communication device and other children are learning how to use communication devices at that school. That's where she got her first device. And so she wanted to go back to the school, and one of her housemates went with her. So the two of them would go, I think they went on alternate weeks and go and volunteer in one of the classrooms there. So again, as you say, just giving meaning. So she initiated that. It just took me a while to figure it out, but we managed to make it happen for her. And then one of the other things that they did, all of the ladies in the house, they went to one of the parks and they got volunteer status from the city and they went to pick up litter from one of the parks there. So they had their t-shirts, they had so they were identified as volunteers. So again, it's just giving them that sense of meaning and that sense of contribution. And so I highly encourage it and I'm glad you brought that up today.
Yeah, and to your point, you might not know what that exactly is going to look like for your loved one. So through this whole process of thinking about creating that awesome ordinary life for your loved one, creating that life plan, there's often a lot of exploring involved. You think about what might be best for your loved one, but then you got to kind of support your loved one to try or experiment with it. One of my mentors, Michael Kendrick, he calls it life tasting.
Oh,
And you might
okay.
have to life taste something 3 or 4 times to understand if you really like it or not.
Hmm.
So there is an element of that. And the other piece is that there's no creating a perfect plan.
Mm.
So you create what you think is best, and then it's going to evolve
Yes.
over time.
Hmm.
Okay, let's move into the next step, which is step number 6, home. So it's thinking about creating the best home for your loved one. Now, many families that I start working with, they're like, okay, let's focus on home, right? But it's step 6 for a reason, right? Because if we only think about home, we're missing a huge other section of your loved one's life. And
Hmm.
all of the steps that we've talked about so far before step number 6 help your loved one have a better home life.
Mm.
Because if your loved one is growing and they're expanding their capability, they're going to be more capable in their
Yes.
own home, which might mean less paid support, which might mean more freedom and
Yeah.
more privacy potentially in their own home.
Yeah.
Relationships. If we don't focus on relationships, we don't want our loved one to be isolated in
Right.
their home, right? So we want to think about, well, maybe they want other people to help them make decisions if they're in their own home. Maybe they want people to come visit when they're in their
Hmm.
own home. So contribution, we want them to have a fulfilling day. We don't want them to just be, again, isolated in a home
Yes.
of their own. So all of these steps build on each other. So they're strategic, the order that they're in. So when thinking about home, it's not just thinking about, the special options or, I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation on the podcast around my family and myself only thinking a group home was the only
Mm.
option for my sister. So as families, we're kind of programmed that that's the case. So we want to set that aside, okay, and think through, well, what are all of the ordinary options where anyone could live? And start by exploring those. Another
Mm.
one of my mentors uses this quote. Her name's Lorna Sullivan, and she resides in New Zealand, and she's been doing this work for over 40 years now with families. She says to exhaust the ordinary before the special. Okay.
Okay. Like it.
So the special is there, but let's explore and exhaust the ordinary before going into the special. And when we exhaust the ordinary, that opens the doors to so many more possibilities
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
we wouldn't even have considered if we didn't take that approach. So,
Yeah. Love
one
it.
often thought experiment that I guide families through is thinking about, well, what would it look like for your loved one to live in an apartment? And some families, their immediate reaction is, that's not possible. That would never happen. Okay, I hear you. That's where you're at. Maybe that's what you're living at. Maybe that's true. But what if it's not? Right? And maybe that's not the right solution. But there's a lot of things we can learn just by thinking through that
Yeah.
thought experiment.
Yes.
Because we're going to think through, well, okay, where might our loved one live? Who might they live with? What might the day look like for our loved one in their own apartment? What types of supports might be needed? What might our loved one be able to do on their own? What might they need to learn to live in that type of environment? What are the vulnerabilities we need to protect against? So it just guides us through thinking about what a more ordinary home could look like.
Mm.
Now, I suggested that there's better homes than a group home for our loved ones. And the reason behind that is if we think about a group home environment, it's really forced shared living. So, what do I mean
Mm.
by that? Well, often a group home will have something like 4 to 6 beds in it, which is
Yeah.
often how an agency would talk about it.
Yeah.
And maybe there's an empty bed in that group home. And what would that look like? Well, it would be our loved one moving in with 3 to 5 other people who all have disabilities, who are all strangers. And our loved one's not
Yes.
necessarily choosing that for themselves. So that's what I mean by forced shared living.
Mm.
So if we didn't think about that for ourselves, if we were put in that situation where we didn't have a choice and we're put into forced shared living with 3 to 5 other people who we don't know, all whom have disabilities, where people are working in that house who we don't get to pick who those people are. We don't get to pick who's coming and going. There's a high turnover of people. We don't get to choose the rules of
Right.
how that house operates, but we have to abide by those rules,
Yeah.
right? And it's thinking about, well, for ourselves, would we choose to live there?
No.
And that's the answer
No.
that 100% of people give, Valerie, right? So why do we assume that people with disabilities need to live in a group home,
Yeah.
right? So we need to kind of do that level of thinking to then
Yeah.
be like, okay.
Sorry, when you say group home, are you talking government subsidized kind of housing or government operated? Is that what you mean by group home?
Yeah, so when we think about group homes, I mean, there's different definitions behind it. When I
Hmm.
think about a group home, yeah, I think traditionally we're talking about an agency is running the home. When I think about it, it's more that forced shared living
Mm. Okay.
piece. So it doesn't matter who's operating it because we're really thinking about what is it like to live in that
Mm.
environment. So we're thinking about the living environment, and anytime people are really forced to live together, where you have multiple people with disabilities living together and then multiple different supporters coming and going,
Yeah.
it creates an environment where you don't have control over your home.
Right.
If we think about what does home really mean, for
Yeah.
most people, it means privacy. It means freedom. It means home is really our sanctuary,
Yeah.
all right? Or we want it to be. And if we have an environment where we're living with people we're not choosing to live with, we don't get to set the rules, we have multiple workers coming and going, we're probably not going to describe that as a sanctuary.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really about the home environment. Thinking about, well, what's the best home environment for our loved one
Hmm.
and creating that vision for what that could look like. And then how can we start to take small steps
Yeah.
toward that?
Okay. Cool. All right. So next
Uh,
step.
yeah, the next step. So that's 6. And then step 7 is support and finances. So it's
Ooh.
thinking about what are the right types of support for our loved ones. So many times it's just thinking about, okay, we're doing a lot of family support right now.
Yeah.
And then we need more support so that our brains automatically are kind of trained to go toward paid support because that's where we're
Yes.
told as families we're fighting for as much paid support that we can get, even
Yeah.
though it may or might not be the right type of support or good support or whatever. So the way I guide families to think about it is those aren't your only 2 options.
Okay.
There's 5 different types of support that you want to think about, and you want to strategically layer those types of support into your loved one's life
Okay.
in a specific order.
Ooh.
So the first type of support is self-support or that capability piece. So that's kind of
Okay.
bringing in step 3 of the
Hmm.
life planning process into where we're at right now and thinking about support. I help families visualize this as being a support pyramid. So if we put capability at the bottom or self-support at the bottom, the more we can build that up, the more stable your loved one's support is going to be.
Okay.
Then the next layer or level we want to think about building in is what technology supports can we put in place? So
Okay.
technology keeps growing, keeps expanding,
Mm.
is going to
Yeah.
play a bigger and bigger role in our lives as we move forward. And there's different types of technology that can provide support for your loved one, whether it's as simple as providing prompts or reminders or calendar tools,
Hmm.
or things like front door safety or
Yes.
kitchen safety. Like there's so many different types of technologies that we can build in that provide protections and support for our loved
Hmm.
ones. Some are going to be right for your loved ones, some are not going to be right. So you have to
Yeah.
evaluate those, but it's a pretty reliable type of support that is usually just a one-time cost. I mean, some things require subscriptions and stuff like that, but
Great.
is usually more cost effective than paid support.
Yes.
The third tier of support when I think about layering in is family support.
Hmm.
So I get it. Most families want to be doing less of that, but it's still an important layer to put in there because that type of support is based on love, based on trust, and is going to be
Yeah.
there. So we still want to layer that in. The next layer of support to think about is natural supports. So,
Mm.
uh, what does natural supports mean? It means it could be things like a supportive roommate. So maybe a neurotypical roommate that lives with your loved one that knows how to keep a home, knows how to make meals, things
Yeah.
like that. Person to be a good role model. It could be, if we're thinking about in the community, like work or volunteering, it could be a peer that your loved one volunteers or works beside. It
Hmm.
could be a supportive neighbor, those sorts of things.
Right.
And the last piece we want to layer in is paid support.
Okay.
So, where there might still be gaps, maybe paid support fills those gaps.
Yeah.
And the reason to layer them in that order is because if we just start with paid support, that just becomes the solution. And then it's
Yeah.
not all that sustainable of a support solution because, well, what if the support person calls off? What if the agency cancels? What if you lose funding? Right? So, all of those are big risks.
Hmm.
So if you layer in those five types of support, you create a much more sustainable support system over time that supports your loved one's growth. So yeah, and then we want to be thinking about creating a 5-year vision for what that would look like. And you want this support vision to support the rest of your loved one's life vision, right? So again,
Yeah.
that's why we have it near the end. And then we want to also be thinking about the finance piece, so estate planning and all that good
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last piece, step 8, is really bringing your life plan together. So it's making sure you have your 5-year vision written for those core pieces. So capability, relationships, contribution, home, support, and
Hmm.
finance. And then from there, it's looking at what are the foundational elements to implement over the next year. So those are your 1-year goals. Then you want to
Right.
break it down into 3-month action plans. I usually suggest something like 3 to 6 goals. And then for those 3 to 6 goals, what might be 3 to 5 small steps that you're going to take over the next
Okay.
3 months to move toward it? So it gives
Right.
you the direction and then it gives you the implementation plan.
Right. And the steps to get to the goal. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Love it. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eric, for walking us through all of that. Wow, it's pretty overwhelming, I must say. Just from a parent perspective, it's like, wow, that's a lot. But I love that you keep reinforcing that it doesn't have to happen overnight. It's something that works over a 5-year plan. And then we break it down. What are we going to achieve this year? Then we break it down. What are we going to try to achieve in the next 3 months? So thank you so much for that. We so appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
Eric, where can our audience go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'll provide you a couple of links that you can have people reference down below in the show notes here, but they can go to empoweringability.org. That's my website. There'll be a navigation bar. There'll be a link that you could click there to get the free life planning 101 guide, or we'll have a direct link to it in the show notes. That's
Yes.
probably the best place.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much. Last thing, what pearls of wisdom do you have to share with our families that are navigating their journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest keys is just to get started.
Yeah.
And often when having conversations with families, it's the feeling like, well, it's not the right time
Hmm.
to get started, or it doesn't feel like the right time to get started.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of this Chinese proverb, which goes something like, when is the best time to plant an oak tree? Well, the best answer is 20 years ago,
Yes.
but that's not available. So when is the second best time? Well, the second best time to plant that oak tree is today.
Yeah.
Right? So even though you might not feel like it's the right time, or you might not feel like it's ready, or maybe you feel like you should have got started 20 years ago, but you're feeling like you're not quite ready to get started. In all likelihood, the most time, the most energy you're going to have to help your loved one live into their best life, which also helps you live into your best life,
Yes.
is now.
Yes.
So even if you're feeling not ready to start taking small steps forward, because that's where you're going to see results. That's where you're going to see gains and those small steps add up over time, right? One thing I think about is if you take one small step per week, right? Even if it's working on this for 10, 15 minutes per week, thinking about your loved one's life plan and creating this best future, 10 minutes a week, right? If that's all you took and that helped you take one small step every week, over a year, that's 52 small steps. And then if
Yeah.
you look back over the course of the year, oh, I took 52 small steps. It might not feel like a lot in a week, but over the course of a year, you're going to see a lot of progress. So
Yeah.
even though you're not feeling ready, get started.
Thank you so much. All right, audience, you've heard, get started. And I just want to thank you so much for listening in. Please share the episode and remember, live with intention, embrace the journey. Thanks for joining me today on Forever Home for our kids with disabilities. I hope today's episode gave you something new to think about and it increased your confidence on your journey. If you found this episode helpful, do tell others about it. Use the text feature to let me know your questions. Tell me what you want to know. Until next time, take care and keep building your child's future.